The scope of Alyx allows the game to go above and beyond what we usually see in VR with some awesome immersive details and design decisions that really make it shine. Today, I want to speed you through a bunch of those little details, and even if you're an absolute master of the game, I hope you'll find at least one thing you didn't already know about. Okay, let's get started. One of my absolute favorite details in this game is that almost every object has a completely unique sound when being shaken. And this reads especially well because it's spatial audio, so you'll hear it most from the ear that it's closest to. This is something that no flat-screen game needs to do, because only in VR do players have the ability to pick up practically anything in the game and just mess around with it. I can just imagine the sound design team looking at the game's ridiculously long list of props and realizing that they need to come up with what a VHS tape or a TV sounds like when being shaken. That's a ton of work for this little detail that a lot of people probably won't notice, but it really helps players feel immersed when they pick up, say, a box of matches and hear that exact sound you expect to hear when you shake one in real life. Okay, so everyone knows the gravity gloves in Alyx are a diegetic way to give players a force pull capability so it's easier to grab objects at a distance. And practically everyone I've talked to agrees they work exceptionally well. They're not only helpful, they're fun to use. But what exactly makes the gravity gloves perhaps the single best force pull implementation seen in VR to date? Let's break it down. In most VR games, force pull mechanics have two stages. The first, which we'll call selection, is pointing at an object and seeing it highlighted. The second, which we'll call confirmation, is pressing the grab button, which pulls the object to your hand. Half-Life Alyx adds a third stage to this formula, which is the key to why it works so well. First is selection, where the object glows so you know what's being targeted. Then there's a unique second stage, let's call it lock-on, which involves pulling the trigger to confirm the selection. Once you do, the selection is locked on. Even if you move your hand now, the selection won't change to any other object. And the final stage, confirmation, requires not a button press, but a pulling gesture to finally initiate the force pull. Adding that extra lock-on stage to the process significantly improves reliability, because it ensures that both the player and the game are on the same page before the object is finally pulled. And it should be noted that each of these stages has distinct sounds, which reinforces to the player that everything is going according to their intentions. And the use of a pulling gesture makes the whole thing more immersive by feeling like the game world is responding to your physical actions rather than just the press of a button. There's also a little bit of magic to the exact speed and trajectory that the objects follow, like how it can shift in real time to reach your hand. Those parameters are carefully tuned to feel satisfying without feeling like the object just automatically attaches to your hand every time. This strikes me as the kind of thing that an animator might even have weighed in on, to say, how do we get that in and out speed to feel just right? It's natural for players in VR to want to try to put a hat on their head when they find one. But did you know that wearing hats in Alyx actually protects you from barnacles? And yes, that's the official name for those horrible creatures that stick to the ceiling. But it's not just hats you can wear. The game is surprisingly good at letting players wear anything that's even vaguely hat-shaped, like this pot, or this cone. To me, this kind of feels like a detail that Valve added after watching more than a few playtesters try to put these things on their head and realize it didn't work. Speaking of wearing props, you can also wear gas masks. And the game takes this one step further. The gas masks actually work. One part of the game requires you to hold your hand to cover your mouth to avoid breathing spores, which make you cough and give away your position. If you wear a gas mask, you're equally protected, but you also get the use of both hands again, which gives the gas mask an advantage over just covering your mouth. The game instructs players how to cover their mouth, but never says anything about the gas mask. It's something that they just can figure out on their own if they're curious. It's sort of like a functional Easter egg. And it's really fun in VR when you have some inkling that something might work this certain way, and it actually does. Next up is a feature that's easy to forget about unless you've spent a lot of time watching other people play Half-Life Alyx. The game has an optional spectator interface, which shows up only on the computer monitor. It gives viewers the exact same information that the actual player has while in the game, like which weapons they have unlocked or equipped, how much health they have, how much resin, and even what items are stowed in those little hand pockets, which is really cool because I've had instances where spectators reminded me that I had something important in those pockets that I had forgotten about, like a grenade or a health syringe that helped me out of a rough spot. And Valve went further than just adding an interface that's just for spectators. They also added built-in camera smoothing, zoom levels, and even a selector to pick which eye the camera will look through. That last one might seem like a unnecessary detail, but because people are either left or right eye dominant, being able to choose your dominant eye means the spectator will correctly see what you're aiming at when you're aiming down the sight of a gun. And while we're looking at the menus here, it's also worth noting that the game menu is primarily designed for laser pointer interaction, but it also works like a touchscreen. While this seems maybe trivial today, let's remember Half-Life Alyx came out almost 4 years ago somehow. The foresight to offer both modalities means that if a player's first instinct is to touch the menu or use the laser pointer, both choices are equally correct. We have so much more cool stuff to talk about, but real quick here, just 1 minute, I promise. Let me thank our sponsor for making this episode possible. If you're watching this video right after it was posted, you're about to see the best HTC Vive deals of the year. As a leader in the XR space, HTC Vive agreed to support this specific video series because they know how important great design is when it comes to XR. And that's also why they spent years crafting headsets designed to make VR games like Half-Life Alyx and all immersive content shine. Vive XR Elite is their flagship standalone headset with a completely unique form factor that allows you to transform it from a regular headset into a foldable pair of XR glasses to bring games with you wherever you go. And Vive Pro 2 makes PC VR content shine thanks to its 5K visuals, a 120-degree field of view, and built-in high-quality audio. Available in the US through December 17th, you can save up to $400 on the award-winning Vive Pro 2 full kit, or $100 on the cutting-edge XR Elite. Not to mention big discounts on Vive trackers, controllers, base stations, and even their wireless adapter. Just head over to vive.com where you'll find all of the discounts, but hurry up because these deals will not stick around. Alright, back to it. All key items in Alyx have subtle lights on them to draw your attention. This is basic game design stuff, but I have to say that Alyx's approach is much less immersion breaking than many VR games where key objects are highlighted with like a glaringly obvious yellow mesh or just a white circle. For the pistol magazine, the game makes it clear, even at a distance, how many individual bullets are in the magazine. In fact, it does this in 2 different ways. First, every bullet has a light which lets you see from the side of the magazine roughly how full it is. And then on the bottom of the magazine, there's a radial indicator that depletes as the ammo runs down. Because this is all done with light, if the magazine is half full, it will be half as bright, making it easy for players to tell just how valuable the magazine is to them with a glance, even at a distance. Completely empty magazines emit no light, so you don't mistake them for something useful like a partly full or totally full magazine. Many players learn this affordance really quickly, even without really thinking about it, which is why I love it. One takeaway here is that a game's most commonly used items, the things players will interact with the most, should be the things that are most thoughtfully designed. Players will collect and reload literally hundreds of magazines throughout the game, so spending time to add these subtle details to something they will do constantly meaningfully improves the entire experience. And speaking of commonly used items in Alyx, it's time to talk about guns. There's plenty of shooting in this game, so Valve spent a lot of time building detailed and interactive weapons. Again, shooting and reloading is something that a player is going to do hundreds of times in the game, so it's essential to make sure that that part of the gameplay really gets a lot of attention. Alyx doesn't necessarily do anything with weapons that hasn't been seen in other games. but it nails all of the basics, and for me, it stands as the perfect bar for how weapons should work and feel in VR if a developer wants to have a realistic feel for their guns. So first things first, each weapon has a unique in-world ammo counter. The pistol has a segmented indicator. The shotgun has a small numeric indicator, and the Combine SMG has a radial indicator. Instead of floating a number next to the gun or having some kind of bar, these diegetic details encourage players to look and understand what their weapons are saying to them. Alyx also gets bullet chambering correct, which gives each weapon an opportunity for a little feeling of mastery when the player understands how it works. This is a small detail that's part of how real weapons work, and I'm sure many of you already understand chambering. But we all learned about this at some point, so for anyone who doesn't know, here's how it works. When you load a magazine into the pistol, the first bullet in the magazine needs to be chambered, or you've probably heard someone say cocking the gun, meaning that the bullet is removed from the magazine and put in place ready to fire. Now the bullet left the magazine, if you took the magazine out, the bullet's still in the gun and ready to shoot. When the gun is completely empty, the chamber stays open, uncocked if you will, so that it's ready to receive a new bullet. But this means that if you put a new magazine into the gun before shooting the last bullet, you don't need to cock the gun again because it's already primed and ready to go. And if you look at the visuals, and even more importantly, listen to the sounds, it's clear that Valve wanted to subtly convey all of this to the player. First is the chambering sound, so we know when the gun's ready to shoot. Then you'll hear a unique sound when your magazine is empty, but the final round is still chambered. If you shoot again, you'll get a different sound, and even lights which tell you the gun is now completely empty and the chamber has been left open. So that little opportunity for weapon mastery I mentioned is for players to listen for that second to last shot. That's the ideal moment to reload, because it means you can put in a new magazine without needing to cock the gun again. And that might not seem like a big deal, but in the heat of combat in this game, it helps to skip a step. And the same thing is true for the shotgun. It doesn't have an ejectable magazine, but the cartridges still need to be chambered. If you shoot all of the rounds before reloading, you'll need to cock the gun again. But if you reload before your very last shot, then you don't need to. The game's only other weapon, the Combined SMG, doesn't have a chambering sequence because it operates purely on sci-fi space magic. And Valve, this is the one place where I'm going to call you out in this particular video. When reloading the SMG, I really want to insert the mag and then rip off that other part with a nice satisfying sound, rather than see it just fall out of my hand onto the ground. It's just begging for that interaction. In any case, the bullet chambering is a clever detail because many players will just shoot their weapons until completely empty, then put in a new magazine and cock the gun every time. And functionally, that works fine. But those who get really familiar with what their weapon looks and sounds like can pick up on this little shortcut that saves you an extra step in the middle of combat. While we're talking about reloading, it's worth pointing out another little detail about how the game treats shotgun reloading in particular. If you've played shooters, you know the common trade-off with a shotgun is it's slower to reload since it doesn't have a separate magazine. That's true in Alyx too, which helps differentiate the shotgun from the other weapons. But Valve wanted to balance that realism with the time and effort it takes to actually reload the gun. So the shotgun holds 7 cartridges, which means reloading it from completely empty would require the player to reach over their shoulder and insert a cartridge every time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a lot of repetitive movement. Valve smartly cuts the reload time in half by having Alyx pull out 2 shells every time the player reaches for their ammo. So a full reload then happens in 4 gestures instead of 7, but the player still gets 7 rounds. And another tiny detail is that if the shotgun only has room for one more cartridge, or if the player only has one cartridge left, Alyx only pulls out a single shell. And last but not least, when you put that last cartridge into the shotgun, it makes a unique noise to let you know it's fully reloaded. Okay, did we talk enough about guns yet? I think we did. Let's talk about something happier. Plants. People love plants. And people also love touching plants. If you put a plant in a VR game within someone's reach, they will try to touch it. This is just a fact that we all must accept. Valve clearly understood this, as the zoo level is absolutely full of plants, and they are all reactive to your touch. Not only that, which preserves immersion, but they also react to explosions, which just further makes them feel like they're responding realistically to the world. And this even extends to the game's alien flora, which reacts to your proximity either with lights, or bulging, or jiggling. And speaking of things that players will always want to touch in VR, did you know that it's actually illegal to put a piano in a VR game that can't be played? Pretty sure that's part of the Geneva Convention. Anyway, I'd be willing to bet that most players actually know that the piano in Half-Life Alyx is playable. It's kind of set up for you to discover that. But did you know that it's also playable with other objects? Including your gun? And wait a minute, you don't think... Yes, you can shoot the keys, and I actually didn't know this before I went to film this, and then just had that idea that maybe they made it work, and it does. Awesome. But this isn't just about the piano. In Half-Life Alyx, almost anything you can touch with your hand, you can also touch with your weapons. This seems like a minor detail, but like I talked about in episode 1, with enough time, the things that we hold start to feel like part of our own body, spatially speaking. We slowly gain an innate sense for where a tool starts and stops, so that we don't bang it into the world around us or even into ourselves. And like I talked about in episode 3, touching the virtual world not with our own hands, but something inanimate that's in our hands, works a bit like an immersion insulator by visually explaining why we can't feel the things that we're touching. Having the game reflect this reality, that the thing in our hands is an extension of ourselves, adds a certain realism that's hard to define. It's those moments where you don't even think about it consciously. It just seems like a natural thing to use your gun because it's in your hand to push open a door or swat an object out of the way. Compared to having the weapon just clip through objects and walls like we see in many VR games, this little detail helps maintain the lie that the headset feeds to our eyes. And last but not least, these vodka bottles. The liquid inside is reactive to your movement, which makes it feel that much more real. And yes, this effect has been done in games before and since Half-Life Alyx, but none have done them this well. Not that I've seen, at least. The liquid interacts with light, and it even makes little bubbles when shaken up. Or if you flip it upside down, they go the right direction. It's sort of mesmerizing. Now, a quick note before we wrap up. Half-Life Alyx is an amazing game, and it's so cool to see all these little details and the thinking that went into them. But I want to make sure we all understand that while it would be awesome to see this intricate level of detail in more VR games, the reality is that no VR studio has access to the number of people, the timeline, or the budget that Valve threw at this game. So it would be unfair to see it as a failure when other VR games don't reach this level of detail. Alyx is a distillation of a million game design decisions, big and small, made by tons of people over the course of years. And if we look at it as a collection of the best ideas that made it through that gauntlet, we get the benefit of learning in just 15 hours of playtime the smart bits of design that took Valve many years to figure out. That's a lesson we should all want to take. If you somehow have yet to play this game, you can and should find Half-Life Alyx exclusively on Steam VR. Check the description for a link straight to the store. And stick with me here for one more second. I have a quick favor to ask. We want to make this series the best that we can, and to help make that possible, we put together a really quick 2-minute survey, it might not even take 2 minutes, to get feedback about this video, because we want to know what you liked or didn't like and how we can make our future episodes even better. And if you already filled out a survey from a previous episode, please also fill out this one if you don't mind. Each survey is unique to the episode and helps us learn and improve. The survey link is right here as a QR code, and you'll find it in the description as always. And the last thing, you knew it was coming. If you enjoyed this video, please hit us with a like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss more episodes of Inside XR Design.